If you had almost no money right now, savings, no investments, maybe even some debt, could you still build wealth? Most people would immediately say no. And the reason they say no isn't because it's impossible. It's because they've been taught that wealth starts later, after you make more money, after you get a better job, after things stabilize, after you figure things out. But that belief is exactly what keeps people stuck for years. Because wealth doesn't start later. It starts with how you handle money right now. So what I'm going to do in this video is walk you through exactly what I would do if I had to start over from zero. Not theory, not just work harder. A real system that works in real life, especially if you don't have much to work with. And before we even get into the steps, I want you to understand something important. This is not about quick wins. This is about building something that actually lasts. Because the reason most people never build wealth isn't because they can't. It's because they never build the system. Let's start with the reality most people avoid. If you feel broke right now, it's not just about how much you make. It's about how much control you have. Because I've seen people making $40,000 a year with savings, and people making $100,000 living paycheck to paycheck. So what's the difference? It's control. And control starts with awareness. So the very first thing I would do, and this sounds simple, but it's powerful, is track every dollar for 7 days. Not forever. Just 7 days. And the goal is not to judge yourself. It's awareness. Because most people don't actually know where their money goes. They assume, they guess, they estimate. But when you actually track it, when you see it, something changes. You start noticing patterns. How often you spend without thinking. Where money disappears. What actually matters versus what doesn't. And that's important because you can't fix what you don't see. Imagine two people. One tracks nothing. The other tracks for 1 week. By the end of that week, one of them has an advantage. Not because they make more money, but because they understand their money. And that understanding becomes the foundation for everything else. Because once you're aware, you naturally start making better decisions. You pause before spending. You question purchases. You become intentional. And that awareness creates control. Now, once you have that control, the next step is creating space. And this is where most people get stuck. Because they think they need a lot of money to feel stable. But you don't. You need a small buffer. Even $300 to $500 can completely change your situation. Because right now, if you don't have a buffer, every problem becomes a crisis. A flat tire, a random bill, something unexpected. It throws everything off. And that keeps you stuck in survival mode. So your goal is not to get rich first. Your goal is to get out of survival mode as fast as possible. And that might mean doing things you don't love for a short period of time. Cutting, spending harder than you want to. Saying no temporarily. Selling things you don't use. And most people underestimate this. But if you look around your house, there's probably hundreds or even thousands of dollars sitting there in things you don't actually need. Old electronics, clothes, unused items. That's money doing nothing. Turning that into cash is one of the fastest ways to create momentum. And momentum is everything. Because once you get that first $100, then $200, then $500, something shifts. You start believing it's possible. And belief matters more than people realize. Because once you believe, you act differently. Now, once you have that buffer, the next step is eliminating anything working against you. And for most people, that's high-interest debt. Especially credit cards. Because if you're paying 20% interest, your money is working against you every single day. You're trying to move forward while something is constantly pulling you back. And the danger is it doesn't feel urgent because the payments are spread out. But over time, it adds up in a big way. So your strategy needs to be simple. Focus on one debt, not everything. 1. Pay the minimum on everything else and throw every extra dollar at that one target. And when it's gone, you roll that payment into the next one. This creates momentum. And momentum keeps you going. Because the biggest risk isn't doing it wrong. It's quitting. Now, once you've stabilized and reduced pressure, now you're ready for what most people think is the beginning, but it's actually the middle. Investing. And this is where people overcomplicate everything. They think they need a lot of money. They think they need perfect timing. They think they need to understand everything before starting. And because of that, they delay. And that delay costs them years. So if I was starting from almost nothing, I would start small on purpose. $25 or $50 a week. And I know that doesn't sound exciting, but that's the point. Because the goal at this stage is not to get rich. It's to build the habit. Because once investing becomes automatic, everything changes. You stop thinking of money as something you spend, and you start thinking of it as something you grow. And that shift is powerful. And here's what most people miss. Consistency matters more than the amount. Because consistency compounds not just your money, but your behavior and your identity. You become someone who invests. And over time, that identity leads to better decisions, bigger opportunities, and stronger results. Now, while all of this is happening, something else becomes more important: your income. Because there's a limit to how much you can cut, but there's no limit to how much you can earn. So at some point, your focus has to shift from saving money to increasing your income. And this doesn't mean working more hours forever. It means becoming more valuable, learning skills, improving your position, finding better opportunities. Because income is the engine. And when that engine grows, everything accelerates. But this is also where people make their biggest mistake. As their income increases, their lifestyle increases at the same rate. And that's what keeps them stuck. So instead, you do the opposite. You keep your lifestyle stable, and you increase your saving and investing. That gap between what you earn and what you spend is where wealth is built. Now let's talk about the hardest part: time. Because building wealth is slow, and that's why most people fail. Not because it doesn't work, but because they don't stick with it long enough. At first, it feels like nothing is happening. You're doing the right things, but the results don't look impressive yet. And that's the hardest stage, because it requires belief without immediate reward. But what's actually happening is you're building momentum. You're building a system. And once that system is in place, everything starts to accelerate. Your savings grow faster. Your investments compound. Your confidence increases. And eventually, you reach a point where your money starts working for you instead of against you. And that's the shift. That's when everything changes. Because now, you're not just earning money. You're building wealth. So if I had to start over with nothing, this is exactly what I would do. I would take control of my money. Create a small buffer. Eliminate what's working against me. Start investing small but consistently. Focus on increasing my income. Avoid upgrading my lifestyle too quickly. And repeat that process over and over again. Because wealth is not built in one decision. It's built in thousands of small ones. And once you understand that, you stop looking for shortcuts. And you start building something real. And if you stick with it, something powerful happens. You stop feeling stuck. You stop feeling behind. And you start seeing real progress. Not overnight, but consistently. And that's how you build wealth even if you're starting with almost nothing. Thanks for watching. If this helped you, like and subscribe to The Daily Yield. Because we're building real financial progress, one step at a time.